Hi, everybody. Now, when I started this channel, one of the segments or little shows and series I would do off and on is the cartoon flashback. But today, I want to do a different kind of flashback, a flashback to something I grew up with in the early parts of my childhood. Now, for a lot of us, this was a show that we grew up on back in the 1980s, the 70s, the 60s, and primarily the 50s. In fact, it was one of the first actual educational children's shows to be in existence since the dawn of television. And what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about nothing more than I'm talking basically about nothing more than Romper Room or nothing else but Romper Room here. Now, for some of you that may know what Romper Room is, especially those of my generation. I'm almost 45 in July. For a lot of you that know what Romper Room is, a lot of you like me grew up with it in the 1980s, mostly the early to mid 80s. And for a lot of you that are a few years older than me, like let's say my sisters, you grew up with it in the late 70s to early 80s, if you will. And what this show was initially was, like I say, an educational series that had been around since almost the dawn of television itself. And it was meant to educate preschoolers, mainly kids around the age of 2 to about 5, 6 years old, or those that may be, mentally not ready for actual public school. Now, for me, this was part of my education first thing in the morning. The first thing that my mom put on before hold on for a sec, before schooling me, as you can see here on the, you can see right here where I'm pointing at right there on the bottom right of the screen. That that is me being homeschooled by my mom. That's in my actual bedroom. But Romper Room was a show that, if I remember correctly, because I'm always being told, "Oh, you can remember this and you can remember that, but you can't remember, certain things, that get told to you right away." And that comes from family and even friends that probably have a little too much to drink. And I'm not talking Coca-Cola or anything like that. I'm talking the strong stuff. But anyway, that's me. Like I said, this is me. Uh, I was pointing to it for you. This is me being homeschooled in my bedroom by my mom. And she did this mainly because she felt that I was not yet, mentally ready for public school. So I was kind of a late bloomer. I was one of those kindergartners that went in just when I was still 6, but starting to turn 7, or just turned 7. So I was a 7-year old kindergartner, believe it or not, or 6.5 going on 7-year old kindergartner, as far as, if I remember correctly. But anyway, you know, anyway, she would, she would homeschool me, but after I would watch this, I would watch these shows, and the hostess that I remember mostly when it came to Romper Room was this lady you see right here, trying to point, that you see right there on the bottom. I think that's one of the Nancy ladies. I'm not really sure if that's that's not the original Nancy. No, that's a different Nancy or a different lady. But this lady here was the hostess of the Romper Room that I watched on KTVU Channel 2, which is now Fox 2 out of Oakland and San Francisco. And the show would come on at 8:30 a.m. in the morning. Now, why did it come on at that time? Mainly because of the fact that for any preschools and head starts at that time frame, the teachers can turn Romper Room on, depending on what station they had it on in their part of the country. They can, or the part of the world, part of the world, excuse me, the part of the country or part of the world. They could turn Romper Room on at the time it came on, whether it was 8:30 their time or 8 o'clock their time or whatever, and they could sit all their Head Start and preschool kids down to watch that so that the lady on the screen can do parts of the education for them. And then after the half hour of Romper Room was over, which it was about I think it was about a half hour, maybe an hour, I can't remember. But I think it was mainly a half hour. But after it was over, then the teachers could be ready to teach the preschool kids, based off what they saw off Romper Room. They could take that and insert it into already what they were planning for that day and for that week. Now, what is the history of Romper Room, you might ask? Well, Romper Room had been around since, like I said, the beginning of time. And in fact, I have two articles I printed out here from local Wikipedia or local wiki and Wikipedia itself. So we're going to go with the Wikipedia one first. And this states, and I quote, this is the history of Romper Room according to Wikipedia. This states, and I quote, Romper Room is an American children's television series that was okay, let me reread that. Let me reread that. It says, and I quote, Romper Room is an American children's television series that was franchised and syndicated from 1953 to 1994. Let me reread that. Romper Room is an Romper Room is an American children's television series that was franchised and syndicated from 1953 to 1994. So it went for basically 41 years. Many might consider it like the second, third, maybe fourth longest children's educational program in the world in history, in the history of television, outside of something like, let's say, Sesame Street. Now, continuing on, it states, and I quote, the program targeted preschoolers, children 5 years of age or younger, and was created and produced by Bert, Kassler and his presenter wife Nancy of Kassler Television. The national version was presented by Nancy Tyrrell and filmed in Baltimore from its inception in 1953. Romper Room was also franchised internationally at various times in Canada, the United Kingdom, Japan, Finland, New Zealand, Puerto Rico, Paraguay, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, Argentina, and Australia. So there's been various different versions of Romper Room seen across the world. Now, continuing on, we're going to talk about the founding. Romper Room was a rare case of a series being both franchised and syndicated, and some local affiliates, Los Angeles and New York, being prime examples, would produce their own versions of the show instead of airing the national telecast. Now, the same could be said for, the Bay Area as well, because the Romper Room, I remember specifically, was, very local, very KTVU wise when I watched it. Continuing on, and I quote, for some time, local shows all over the world used the same script, but with local children. Some affiliates, starting with KWEX TV in San Antonio, translated the scripts into Spanish for local airings. Kids would be on waiting lists for years, sometimes before birth, to be on the show. For example, when Eden Anderson Taylor left the KSL-TV version of Romper Room, the waiting list was over 3 years long. In 1959, John Crosby reported that the waiting list that the waiting list in Baltimore was so long, some of the preschoolers on the waiting list would not have returned on the show until they were 40. The show was called An Actual Kindergarten. So there you go. That's one of the reasons, of course, my mom would have me watch it before she homeschooled me. Continuing on, and I quote, episode format. Each program opens with a greeting from the hostess and the Pledge of Allegiance in American broadcast. That's what they continued to do even when I was watching it. The hostess and her group of children then embarked on 30 or 60 minutes of games, exercises, songs, storytelling, and moral lessons. which were regularly accompanied by background music. The hostess, or sometimes the children in cadence, would ask, "Mr. Music, please," or "We're ready, Mr. Music," to prompt the background music. The young cast, which ranged from 4 to 5 years old, were rotated every 2 months, with many of the hostesses having prior experience working with small children and many being former kindergarten teachers. You see, etiquette was a focus of Romper Room. The hostess was always addressed as Miss. The show also had a mascot, Mr. Doobie. Mr. Do-B, or Mr. Doobie, was an oversized bumblebee who came to teach the children proper who came to teach the children proper deportment. Deportment, I guess. I guess that's what it is. I don't know. Um, he was noted for always starting his sentence with "do be," as in the impression of "do be," for example. Do be good boys and girls for your parents. There was also a Mr. Don't Be to show children exactly what they should not do. Do be balloons were made available for purchase to the public. Sorry, my finger at the mic there. Each balloon featured a painted sketch of Doobie. When the balloons were inflated and then released, they would fly around slowly and emit a buzzing sound. The hostess would also serve milk and cookies to the children. Before eating, they would recite the celebrated Romper Room grace: "God is great, God is good, let us thank Him for our food, Amen." Now, I guarantee you today, and I'll get into this a little later on. I guarantee you today, if they were to do something like this with a show similar, would not pass, unfortunately, unless it was on CBN or D Star, if you will, or Daystar. Continuing on, and I quote: "At the end of each broadcast, the hostess would look through a quote unquote magic mirror, actually an open frame with a handle, the size and the shape of a hand mirror, and recite the rhyme: Romper, romper, bumper, stomper, boo, tell me, do. Magic mirror, tell me today, did all my friends have fun at play?" She would then name the children she saw in television land, saying, for example, "I can see Kathleen, and Owen, and Julie, and Jimmy, and Kelly, and Tommy, and Bobby, and Jennifer, and Martin," and so forth. Children were encouraged to mail in their names, which would be read on the air, first names only. And you know what now that I'm thinking about it, I think there might have been one time, I don't know, it was when I first started watching it or whatever. I think my name got called. And I don't know if it's because my mom sent something in or a parent with a son that had the same name as me sent it in, but it got sent in. It got sent in and got read. So my name was on the show a couple times. In fact, one of the KTVU archive uploads on the YouTube has the Charlie and Humphrey puppets, bits and pieces, and then the Romper Room beginning, and then one of the last children that gets introduced has my name. So go figure. Anyway, the show used then popular Mattel Jack in the Box, sometimes called Happy Jack, for its opening and closing titles. With its traditional nursery rhyme, Pop Goes the Weasel, as a theme song. But from 1981 onwards, a new original theme song was used. Yeah, and you could tell, just like I said, look it up and you'll see what I'm talking about. Let's see. Okay, cut off the beginning here, but basically, they changed it up, and it says 100 syndicated versions were taped in Baltimore starting in 1981 when it was renamed. Basically, in 1981, 1980, 81, they went from just the Romper Room to Romper Room and Friends, which I guess made it more of a friendly tone, and they got rid of I think they stopped using the clown, as much as well. It said 100 syndicated versions were taped in Baltimore with Molly McCoxley, credited as Marley McCoxley Barber after 1985, as host. At that point, they no longer used teachers. The biggest change to the program was the introduction of a series of new puppet characters, introducing a full costume character named Kimball and puppets named Granny Cat and Up Up Kimball and Up Up were performed by Bruce Edward Hall and Granny Cat by McCoskey, aka Miss Molly. The three characters were developed by the great James, or the three characters were developed by the Great Jones Studio in New York City. The new characters starred in a series of vignettes somewhat similar to the neighborhood of make-believe segments on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and were meant to introduce or reinforce simple moral lessons. About 100 of these skits, each running 3 to 5 minutes, were produced for insertion into local Romper Room programs. The host would introduce each segment and comment after its conclusion. In addition, a new opening and closing credits sequence in lyrical theme Romper Room and Friends, containing mostly nonsensical lyrics, but also naming the characters Up Up, Doobie, Granny Cat, and Kimball in the lyrics as well, were introduced, replacing replacing the Pop Goes the Weasel theme that had been used. New songs/music beds were also created and composed by David Spangler, introducing a somber magic mirror theme. Additionally, two British-made shows, Paddington, narrated by Michael Harden, and Simon in the Land of Chalk Drawings, narrated by Bernard Cribbins, were also featured. So if you're wondering where Paddington came from and where Simon in the Land of Chalk Drawings came from, they came from Romper Room. I do remember those segments. And Paddington, of course, took off, if you will. The last host of the syndicated series was Sharon Jeffrey, the only African American to host the show. Miss Sharon hosted the show from 1987 until the series was last filmed in 1992, although new episodes were aired until 1994. Jeffrey's shows were filmed at KTVU in Oakland, California. And I do remember seeing her prior to that. She was kind of like the assistant. Like you had the Nancy host or whoever the local host was for our version of Romper Room, and then you had Sharon as well being the assistant, and I guess she took over afterwards. Going on to broadcast information. Nancy Sturgeon Terrell, born 1940, Richmond, Virginia, known to audiences as Miss Nancy, was the national hostess in the 1960s and early 1970s. When Romper Room was seen on ABC owned and operated stations throughout the United States in locales that did not have their own hostesses. And it just gives more info, like little tidbits where you can find it, like similar programs and stuff. But yeah, going back to what I said, this lady here was the lady I remember the most of watching Romper Room as a kid. And again, it was to help me get ready for homeschool from my mom. My mom would let me watch Romper Room. We'd follow the adequate and everything and all that, and then right into homeschool, and the rest is history. But yeah, it was always a big part of my childhood. But the local version was actually pretty good too. And here, I have some information on that. This is from Local Wiki, if you will, Oakland Wiki, and it says Romper Room was a much beloved children's television show on KTVU from the 1950s up until 1992. The show was originally out. The show was originally out of Baltimore, and the Oakland/San Francisco Bay Area had its very own franchise version, which was broadcasted. Oh, okay, let me reread that. Romper Room was a much beloved children's television show on KTVU from the 1950s until 1992. The show was originally out of Baltimore, and the Oakland/San Francisco Bay Area had its own franchise version, which was broadcast from KTVU in Oakland for most of the show's run, which is the one I remember. Miss Nancy Beast became the host of Romper Room in 1958, which was originally broadcast on KGO Channel 7, and then later from KTVU. Miss Sharon was the last Romper Room host in Northern California who, before being hired, was a fourth grade teacher. Sally Castler Bell hired and trained Miss Sharon in Pacific Palisades, California. The only African American hostess of Romper Room, Miss Sharon was featured on the show from 1987 to 1992, which was filmed at KTVU in the San Francisco Bay Area. And she was the final teacher on the last Romper Room in the United States. In 2006, Miss Sharon posted the following message on IMBB or IMDb, if you will. This is what she said, and I quote: "I was the last Romper Room teacher in Northern California. Miss Sharon, okay, I was okay. This is what Miss Sharon posted. Okay, this is what it says. In 2006, Miss Sharon posted the following message on IMDb, and this is what she said. And I'm just trying to read this. This is why I'm kind of pausing a little bit, trying to make sure I read this correctly. She says, and I quote: "I was the last Romper Room teacher in Northern California. Miss Sharon, I taped the shows from 1987 to 1992. I am also the only African American host of the show. I was a teacher at the time, and I was the first real classroom teacher to host the show. When I was hired, I taught fourth grade. I also taught preschool and kindergarten. The shows were taped on weekends and later," and it cut off again, "and later on Monday evenings. I was, trying to read that there. I was trained by Sally Castor before being hired. Oh, I was trained by Cali Casters in Pacific Palisades, California. My shows were filmed at KTVU in the San Francisco Bay Area. Since this was the last show in the last Romper Room version in the U.S., many of the tapes were archived at KTVU, and I have copies of most of them as well. I always ended my shows with a wink after the magic mirror. I hope that these shows will be released for future generations to enjoy. Romper Bomper." There you go. And it goes into the history as well. It says, "History of Romper Room. This TV preschool of sorts was created by Bert and Nancy Kathler and began on WBAL in Baltimore, Maryland in 1953. This was the only station that Romper Room was seen. This show, however, got the attention from the folks at CBS who wanted to bring Romper Room on a national level. The Castlers turned down the offer from CBS, but still wanted to bring Romper Room to all of America, but in their own unique way. They gave local TV stations the option, broadcasting the main version out of Baltimore, Chicago in the 70s, and back to Baltimore in 1981 via syndication, or producing, quote, their own local version of Romper Room, i.e. franchising, which many TV stations that bought the rights to Romper Room did, which includes, KGO and then later KTVU. Nancy Kassler trained the local hostess herself, and they all had a college education. The training was 1 week but intensive. Nancy also did the Baltimore version of the show and was replaced by her daughter, Sally Kassler, in order to focus on training more Romper Room teachers. Bert and Nancy also provided much of the props and set design for the local version as well. It may be local, but was their baby. Regardless of any version, Romper Room was a show in which children could play games, read stories, and learn about things that the children needed to know about. The magic mirror, in the end of the show, was a way that the Romper Room teacher could reach out to the kids that were watching from home, and who could forget the show's popular mascot Doobie. This show held its ground for 3 decades, By 1981, due to increasing demand for TV stations that wanted a syndicated version of Romper Room, to remedy the Romper Room, to remedy this, Romper Room wasn't. Whoever put this wiki together didn't do it right. No offense. But continuing on, let me reread that. It says, this show held its ground for 3 decades. By 1981, due to an increasing demand from TV stations that wanted a syndicated version of Romper Room, to remedy this, Romper Room was retitled Romper Room and Friends in 1981. The main show was hosted by Molly McCausley, who did a local version in New York before and after taping the syndicated. And three new characters were introduced. Kimball, think of him as an oversized lost cousin of Cookie Monster, Granny Cat, and a clown puppet named Up Up. The stations that still wanted to produce Romper Room on a local level still had that option, and cut-ins with the new characters were produced so that the local stations were able to insert those characters in the local versions. Sadly, during the 1980s, many stations began to drop the show and move on to other things. The show officially ended in 1994. The show had its mirror faults and could be a pain to local editors and even local hostesses, but this show was a hit with the late bloomers and Generation Xers. It was truly a gem in the world of children's television. It will be missed. Now, there's no doubt, I guarantee you right now, there is no doubt that a lot of preschool teachers, Head Start teachers, including my mom, probably wish that this show was still around. They probably wish it was still around. And you know why? Because basically, like it did for me, it got kids ready to be, to be taught. It got kids ready to be taught. Again, for me, I was homeschooled, as you can see right here. I was homeschooled by my mom in the early to mid 80s because I wasn't mentally ready to, be let loose under the public school in kindergarten at the appropriate time. I mean, had I been given that opportunity, I would have been part of the class of 97, not the class of 98. But God has a reason for a lot of things happening a certain way, and He had a good reason for me being held back and being with the class of 98 in Oskaloosa. Oskaloosa, Kansas, that is. But anyway, though, like I was saying, my mom, she would have me watch that. We would follow the lessons, and then I'd get homeschooled. And then after homeschool, have lunch, and then watch whatever shows were on television or play in my room. And that was about it. But Romper Room really helped my mom out in teaching me, as a homeschool teacher, but also, in my opinion, got her ready, because she was also doing Awanas at that time. And I was a cubby, and she was teaching cubbies along with my dad. And like I said, it got me ready. It got her, not me, but it got her ready to be where she is today as a preschool Head Start teacher by giving her that education. By giving her, I should say, an education as well, while she was trying to give me a homeschool education in the process. That's what I was trying to say. But yeah, this is a show that honestly I think should be given a second chance, especially in today's society. But the thing is, though, with today's society, some of the things that Romper Room was known for, like the, God is great, God is good, and all that the prayer that they would say before they would have the milk and cookies, today, unless Romper Room is on a network like Daystar or, TBN, you know, unless it's on one of those outlets, there is no way whatsoever that it would probably be able to do that. Now it might, because there are a lot of, broadcast and syndicated stations that air Sunday morning church services, so that might get that opportunity, but it all depends on who would allow it. If they allow it, that's fine. But there's a good chance, especially with the way things are going, there's a good chance that, yeah, they might be able to do a lot of what they did before, but certain things like the prayer, and all that, the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, the Pledge of Allegiance would still be there. I have no doubt about that. The Pledge of Allegiance would still be there. But even that might get a little criticized. I don't think it would. I think more so that would be allowed back in, more so than let's say the prayer before snack time. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, today. I mean, if it could be brought back today, I think it would be a huge help to a lot of parents out there who have kids going into Head Start and into preschool and into kindergarten. It would be a huge help for them, especially for the teachers, because the teachers can honestly, in my opinion, put this on their television if they have one in there, and they could showcase this, get the kids ready, or keep the kids entertained and educated at the same time while they get a lot of things prepared for the lessons of the day. So to me, having it return, if it ever does, would be a huge, huge boost educationally for a lot of the kindergartner, Head Start, preschool teachers out there, and even some of the teachers, the parents that homeschool the kids even to this day, to get them ready. So, in my opinion, I think it would be worth, bringing back. The only trouble, like I said, is there are certain parts of it that may or may not be, passable depending on whether or not it's a national one. Because if it's national and international, forget it. The prayer part of it, gone. The Pledge of Allegiance or, pledging to whatever country's flag, you're pledging to, could possibly be gone too. I don't think so. I think that would be left in, but still, you never know with today's society. But the prayer part, like I mentioned, if I can find it here, yeah, the hostess would, where it says the hostess would also serve milk and cookies to the children. Before eating, they would recite the celebrated Romper Room grace. God is great, God is good. Let us thank Him for our food. Amen. That there, this here. I don't know if you could see that. Let me see if I can show that to you. If you could see that there. Yeah, it's right here. It's on this section right here. You know, I don't know if that'd be allowed, but if it was a localized version of Romper Room, like they had done back when I was growing up, then maybe yeah, there could be a good chance that it would get an opportunity. But it would all depend on the people that were running those stations to allow it to happen. Now, what's interesting too is you got the return of MeTV Tunes coming up, and you have MeTV. So I think MeTV, if they really want to get nostalgic and kind of not only focus, their network on just classic shows for adults and family and all that, and keep their Tune In With Me and 2 hour 3 hour cartoon Saturday morning block, intact along with the MeTV Tunes. Like I was saying, sorry for that interruption there. But like I was saying though, um, if MeTV wants to, keep a little bit of the, let's say, children's program, like, some might say Tune In With Me, it's kind of like that, and same with the 2 hour Saturday morning deal. If they really want to get into that nostalgic portion of it, they could bring back Romper Room. They could bring in the national version from Baltimore. They could rebroadcast that, and yeah, they may have to edit out the "God is great, God is good, let us thank Him for our food, Amen" part. They may have to do that. But if they bring that in, I think not only would that get people to get behind the what is it, Wagler Broadcasting Corporation more so, but it would encourage them to want to see that WBC Corporation maybe create a news station which is Me TV, you know, educational nostalgia or whatever, to where you could get all these educational programs from the past, from the 50s, the 60s, 70s, the 80s, even the 90s, uh, brought back, to be showcased 24/7, you know, for everybody, for kids, adults, but mostly kids, to watch and learn from. So I think, so I think honestly, if MeTV really wants to, solidify that they are an over-the-air nostalgic station for everybody, adding Romper Room to that lineup, I think would be a great move. Again, they might have to, edit out certain parts, like the prayer before after the hostess serves the milk and cookies. But then again, they may not have to. That would be up to up to the WBC people in charge of MeTV. But overall, I will say that Romper Room to me, in closing, and I do apologize. I have my windows open and our neighbors like to play the music loud. I don't know why. But anyway, like I said, to me, in closing, when I look back at Romper Room, I don't know what that was. But when I look back at Romper Room, I look back at a show that helped educate me, helped me learn some things and all that, uh, growing up, and also preparing me to be taught by my mom in homeschool and then later on in public school. So I have a very I have a very strong fondness for it, and I know I'm not the only one that does, and I know I'm not the only one watching this right now that probably watched the own localized version of Romper Room in the process of even watching the national version. Because now that I think about it, I think the local version was weekdays, and then I think to make up for it, they put the national version on weekends, like on Saturdays and Sundays. But overall, like I said, I have a huge fondness for it, and I hope maybe someday we get it to come back. And if it does, yeah, there might be some changes that will be made because of today's society, but maybe not. It will all depend on how it's brought back, how it's rebroadcasted. I mean, you have things like YouTube here and places like Rumble.com and Facebook and all that you could get away with a little bit more. You don't get tied down as much by restrictions and stuff. So maybe YouTube could be a platform. Some of these ad-free streaming services like Sling could be a platform to probably try to bring it back and introduce it to a whole new generation. And again, like I said, MeTV, is an option that I think through any one of their stations they could bring it back too. That'd be the old school romper room, from the 50s all the way up to the 90s, and I think it would be a huge hit, especially with the teachers of today, with preschoolers and head starts and all that. But yeah, that's all I can really say on it. And I just thought, like I said, I would come out and talk about this and give you my memories on watching Romper Room, and how it, like I said, helped me out as a kid. Because like I said, when they would do the certain activities, I would do it along with them. The milk and cookie thing or whatever my mom would give me as an alternative. Sorry about that, but like I said, like I said, it helped me out. It helped my mom out in a way, and again, if it gets brought back, like I said, if MeTV wants to bring it back, I think it'd be a huge help to a lot of teachers out there and everything. And heck, like I said, you got YouTube and outlets like that to where they could do it as well. I mean, look what's going on. Reading Rainbow. Reading Rainbow is on a what is it an outlet like YouTube, and it's a new version, new iteration of Reading Rainbow, but it's still giving out the same message. So to me, I think Romper Room could, kind of benefit from something similar, if not just have MeTV come out and say, hey, let's get the rights to all the episodes throughout the past 41 years that it was on the air, and make it part of our MeTV broadcast family of networks, if you will. But yeah, overall though, like I said, it was a great show to enjoy and watch. And like I said, I saw the localized version from KTVU, and that's the one I remember very fondly and everything. Like I said, I think maybe if I remember correctly, I think it was the localized version Monday through Friday, and then they did the national version like on the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. But yeah, I have nothing but, like I said, nothing but great fondness for it. And if they ever try to bring it back, hopefully, we'll see. Hopefully we'll see maybe some kind of iteration of it that keeps it true to what it was originally. Maybe tries to keep in certain elements, that may be taboo today. But you know, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see what the future holds. But I think in today's day and age, it would be very much appreciated, not just by parents and grandparents and all that, but also by teachers, kindergarten, preschool and Head Start teachers. I really think they would appreciate, um, something like Romper Room coming back, if not coming back, as Romper Room, for the new generation of children. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are, guys. What is your memories of Romper Room from a localized perspective when you saw your localized version and a national perspective? And did any of you get the chance to appear on Romper Room as one of the kids that was on there? Let me know. Comment below. Live chat during the premiere, which by the way, super chats are open as it describes in the description. Super chats are open. So if you want to help me out there, that'd be great. Super thanks as well during the premiere and after the premiere. It would be greatly appreciated, as well as you could take a look at some of the items, hopefully, that you could shop around for at my Teespring store, as well as at other outlets that I'll be linking you to. But yeah, again, let me know what your memories are of Romper Room. Again, were any of you lucky enough to be kids on your localized version or the national version? Let me know. And until then, guys, I will talk to y'all later. Y'all have a good day, and I am out.